Good evening, everybody. My name is Zach Ford. I am the chair of the Dusty Baker-Sacramento SABR chapter, and we are very excited to have Shane Barclay from JapanBall today join us. Just a few housekeeping things. Please make sure to mute yourselves. There will be opportunity to ask him questions and have some engagement after his presentation. A couple of announcements. I'll go over my chapter, and then Marlene will go over some of the joint chapter stuff. There will be an in-person Dusty Baker Sacramento SABR chapter dinner in West Sacramento at our normal place, the Club Pheasant, on Sunday, June 12th. We'll have a couple of our members who have written books, Daryl Grisby, Celebrating Ourselves, African Americans and the Promise of Baseball, and also Walter Yost, A Glove and a Prayer, a novel of baseball, labor, and race in the Gilded Age. Our keynote that night will actually be Johnny Dosco, the announcer for the River Cats. He's been there, I think, all but the initial year, and he always has a unique perspective. He has joined us in the past, and the last 2.5 seasons of minor league baseball have been very interesting. And I'm sure he'll be able to share his unique perspective, which he said he's willing to do so. And it's been a unique last couple of years for everybody, but baseball and minor league baseball and Johnny Dosco's perspective will be definitely something that will be fun. So if you're able to join us on the 12th of June, that would be great. $35. Just go ahead and send that directly to me. You should be able to have those by email. That information by email. If you are within my chapter, you should have received that already. I will include that in the chat as well. I'm gonna go ahead and pass it over to my counterpart in the Bay Area, Marlene Vogelsang, and she'll take over the rest.
Hi, it's good to see all of you. I look forward to these events because I miss your faces because I've not seen you otherwise. And I'm going to plug that Sacramento dinner meeting. It's worth the drive up there. Not only is Johnny Dosco a great guest, I've been glad when I've been able to see him before, but the Pheasant Club does a great job, and it's great camaraderie and nice to see our colleagues up there. We've got June and July meetings lined up, and I'm going to let Steve tell you about our speakers for that, and then I'll remind you of some upcoming SABR events. Steve?
Thank you, Marlene. Hey, everybody. I'm glad you're all here tonight. This sounds like a really interesting discussion we have this evening. But before we get that, real quickly, just so you know what we have coming up for our Zoom meetings in June and July, we have authors joining us to talk about their new books in both June and July. In June, it's Craig Calcaterra, author of the new book Rethinking Fandom, which it's very relevant to our community here, given the situation going on with the Oakland A's. That'll be an interesting discussion. Then July, we have the husband-wife author team of Jim Walker and Judith Hiltner, and their new book all about the great Red Barber, their biography of Red Barber, the definitive Red Barber biography, is a book we've all been waiting for many years, and I really look forward to an interesting discussion about that. So that's June and July. So thank you. Take it away, Marlene.
Hope you can join us at these. Also, I want to remind you, and you've seen this in your SABR emails, that the first Thursday usually of each month is the Ballpark Figures meeting with Shakia Taylor, and she's always got somebody interesting and somebody who's sort of flying under the radar that we may not necessarily be aware of. So she has a woman who's an ESPN journalist with her this week. That's Thursday, May 5th. You can register for that at the SABR website. Also reminding you that the Malloy Conference on the Negro Leagues is coming up in June. SABR 50 is in August, and the IWBC International Women's Baseball Center and SABR Women's Conference is in September in Rockford. So hope that you can join us for some of these events. I am really happy to have Shane here with us tonight. I have been a fan of baseball tours for years, ever since I went to Cuba with Kit Krieger. And I actually considered JapanBall for going to Japan a couple of years ago. it's more than a couple years ago now, when the A's and the Mariners were opening over there. So anyway, Shane and I have kept in touch about this, and I'm really happy that he's able to join us tonight. Shane, you know, you're a most interesting person. You got a fascinating background. So Shane actually wrote his college application letter on Michael Lewis's Moneyball. And as I understand it, the gist of it was how he's going to use his UC Berkeley education, go Bears, to get himself a job in baseball. Well, one way or another that happened. He traveled to the Dominican and learned Spanish and got involved with baseball there. After he graduated, he was hired by the Diamondbacks and he worked in the California League with the Visalia Rawhides. That was followed by going back to the Dominican to work for Major League Baseball in the office of the commissioner. He worked for 2 years there, and then he went back to New York and worked. Actually, he worked kind of under Kim Eng in international player development, contracts, and working on events such as World Baseball Classic, the All-Star Futures Game, and Fall Ball. Well, he decided he grew up in the Bay Area in Cupertino. He wanted to come back to California. And he also wanted to get involved in the baseball tour side of things. So this would combine a couple of things he loved to do. He got in touch with the Bavasi brothers, who, as you probably all know, were the developers of JapanBall and have been doing that for many years. And as one thing led to another, Shane is now running JapanBall. And he's going to share with us tonight the experience of baseball in Japan. The little bit I've seen of clips and games, it's quite the experience. So Shane, thank you very much for spending this evening with us, and I look forward to hearing more about Japanese baseball.
You're welcome. Thank you, Marlene. That's a great intro. I think you definitely covered it all there. Thanks for inviting me. I really appreciate it, and to Zach and Steve as well. I'm excited to share about Japanese baseball, and thanks for everyone who's joining us. Look forward to hearing any questions. As I present, go ahead and put anything in the chat that you want to ask, or you can raise your hand, and with the raise hand feature, I'd be happy to stop and discuss anything that, if anything comes to mind as I'm talking. So I guess we should just jump to it, and let me share my screen here and make sure that this is working right to get my presentation going. All right, can you all see that all right? Great. All right, so the Japanese baseball experience, here we go. I want to start it off with a haiku. This poet, Masaoka Shiki, is one of maybe Japan's most popular haiku poet, and he's been writing about baseball since the 1800s. Spring breeze, this grassy field makes you want to play catch, from 1890. So we're going to just do a brief history. As you can see by that quote, it's quite a long history of baseball in Japan, almost as long as the American history of baseball. 1872 was the official year that everyone seems to relatively agree on. So 150th year, the sesquicentennial is this year, which we're hoping to celebrate in Japan, of when Horace Wilson introduced baseball to Japan. That was when Japan was going through a very impressive effort to modernize and westernize their culture after being shut off for a long time. So they brought a lot of teachers into the country, including Horace Wilson, and he started playing baseball, and it caught on really quickly. It was played at the high school and college level, and as an amateur sport, baseball is still the main amateur sport in Japan. And one could even argue that it's even more popular as an amateur sport in Japan today. It still is more popular than professional baseball. It really is viewed as a development tool to raise a young man in in the Japanese culture, the discipline that's required. And they kind of made it their own in Japan as far as their approach to training and the kind of personal development aspect. It wasn't just the players, though. The whole schools were getting behind it. There's fierce rivalries. There's cheering sections, like the student body would really get into the games. And so much so that they built in the around 1920 or so, both Koshien Stadium and Meiji Jingu Stadium, which are proper professional stadiums that hold tens of thousands of people and still stand today. They built those all the way back, 100 years ago, which is indicative of how popular amateur baseball was in Japan. Koshien Stadium is on my shirt, by the way. So we got to talk a little more about Koshien. Some of you may have heard about the Koshien High School Baseball Championship. It's played at Koshien Stadium. This is described as March Madness plus the Super Bowl. March Madness because of the intense single elimination format, and then the Super Bowl because of how big of a deal it is in the country. Every prefecture, which is like the states in Japan, is represented, plus a couple more teams, and it's played every August, and the entire nation tunes in. Like if you're even at offices, it'll be on in the background. And if a player leads his team to victory, and really it tends to be the pitchers who often really carry a team throughout the tournament, like that guy will be a national hero, not just while he's playing, but through the rest of his life. These guys are remembered. And it's no insult to say that winning this tournament or doing well in it may be like the biggest accomplishment in someone's life in Japan, because it's just such a big deal. And you can get jobs, you're set up for life if you do well in this tournament, because of the stature it gives you. There's a great documentary that was released a couple years ago called Koshien, Japan's Field of Dreams, that I highly recommend if people want to learn more about it. We could really do a whole presentation on the Koshien tournament. So the professional transition in Japan in baseball was a bit slow. In 1920, there was a team that was founded, but it didn't really catch on. 1934 is when this picture was taken that you see. It's Babe Ruth signing a ball for the Prince of Japan. Dennis is on the call. He could also give a whole talk on Lefty O'Doul and the impact of this tour. But a lot of people claim that it's what really kind of opened the eyes to Japanese baseball, the Japanese baseball world, about the possibility of professional baseball. And eventually that kind of slowly progressed. Obviously, World War II interfered with things, but in 1949, Nippon Professional Baseball, which still is the MLB of Japan, was founded. So just a little look into NPB. You see a little map there. There's 12 teams, 6 in the Pacific League, 6 in the Central League. The Central League was the original league. It's a little more traditional. There's no DH. And then the Pacific League has more newer teams and kind of tends to be associated with a more modern approach to the game. Although I think, as we'll get into, Japanese baseball in general is really a traditional approach at baseball that I think a lot of us on the call could appreciate. The season's 143 games. It basically mirrors the MLB season as far as when they play. End of March they start, and then playoffs in October. The ballparks, this is my thing. I love visiting ballparks. I love leading tours of ballparks. There's a lot of domes there, 6 domes. And they play, it's 12 teams, 12 stadiums, but they have these countryside games, which are really cool. They go play in other cities where fans probably wouldn't normally get to see their team play in person, and they'll go kind of play a game or two in random places around the country, which is pretty cool. I've been to one of them, and it just kind of has a minor league feel, and it gives it's a great way the Yomiuri Giants, the most popular team, they're the ones that typically do this. They have fans all over the country, so their fans can see them in person no matter where they are. The other funny thing about playing in different stadiums is the Hanshin Tigers play at Koshien Stadium, but as I said, the tournament is there in August every year, and the Tigers get kicked out of the stadium. For pretty much all of August, they're on a road trip or playing home games in another stadium, which once again speaks to how big a deal that tournament in amateur baseball is, that the pro team gets kicked out of their home ballpark. Quick shameless plug, if you like those parks, we're selling stuff on our website. Ballpark Blueprints, some of you maybe know them. They do amazing work for stadiums all over in all sports. And I'm really lucky that Tom, the artist there, wanted to work with us, and he made some really cool pieces. So shameless plug there. Check it out, JapanBall.com, if you want anything Japanese ballpark related. All right, continuing on to the kind of the professional side of things. So the first Japanese big leaguer, or Major League Baseball player, I should say, was Masanori Murakami, Mashi as he was known. He played for the Giants. September 1st, 1964, he made his MLB debut at Shea Stadium, pitching well. He played really well for the Giants. He's a left-handed pitcher, reliever. He has the same birthday as Willie Mays, which is coming up soon here. There's the two of them in the dugout. He would have stayed with the Giants. He wanted to stay with the Giants, but a contract dispute resulted in him going back to his original team, the Nankai Hawks in Japan. I got an autographed picture of Mashi back here. And this is Warren Cromartie celebrating the Japan series for the Tokyo Giants. Mashi still is very involved in baseball in Japan. And he comes out to San Francisco and US ballparks for ceremonies and stuff. I'm sure some of you have seen him. If you want to learn more about Mashi, Rob Fitz, who hopefully a lot of you have read his books, he's a very active SABR member. He wrote the book Mashi, there on the left. These other books here all relate to some of the things I've mentioned already in this presentation. If you want to learn more, these are all SABR authors. 3 of these are by Rob Fitz, Bonsai Babe Ruth, and Issei Baseball. Bonsai Babe Ruth is about the tour that I mentioned, which is a fascinating one with Mo Berg and kind of leading up to the war, and Lefty O'Doul and all sorts of good stuff. Issei Baseball is another great one. Rob did a deep dive into the Japanese teams that were playing in the early 1900s, mostly on the West Coast of the US. The Japanese immigrants were using baseball as a way to assimilate into the American culture, and had some really amazing ball players and very successful barnstorming teams. Great read there. And then Gentle Black Giants by another SABR member, Bill Staples Jr., talks about the history of Negro leaguers in Japan. Another great read, really just impressive piece of historical research. He helped translate a version of the book that was written in Japan, and just did a really good job. And the Negro League barnstorming teams have really a long history of going to Japan before Babe Ruth and all of them. So just want to recommend those books and support fellow SABR members with them. So jumping up to more recent history, obviously some of this will be a little more familiar to you, but I just want to it's important to track this when we're talking about the history of Japanese baseball. Most people, their first introduction to Japanese baseball is Mr. Baseball with Tom Selleck. For better or for worse. I mean, it's a funny movie, and it actually did a good job of capturing a lot of the experience of going to Japan to play baseball, even if maybe some of it was wouldn't be appropriate today. But I put a little clip here. Hopefully it comes through good enough where you can at least hear what they're saying in this trailer.
There's no way I'm gonna play in Japan. Welcome to Japan, Mr. Baseball.
What do you think of our country?
The airport's nice, and there's lots of little people walking and talking very fast.
Have you slept with Madonna?
What is this? Practice.
We're not athletes. We're baseball players.
I hate this place.
This is your manager. Must shave mustache.
Probably can't even grow one.
He's learning their way.
So maybe some of you want to watch Mr. Baseball again. Like I said, they do actually a pretty good job of capturing it. Oops. So then my introduction to Japanese baseball is Hideo Nomo. When Mashi came over, they tried to sew it up so that players wouldn't come over to the US, and Nomo found the loophole with his agents, Don Nomura and Gene Afterman. And of course, I think you all remember him taking MLB by storm with his tornado pitching style. Here he is against the Giants in his first, this is his first major league
Fork is what makes him
strikeout.
special. That's the one he strikes you out on. It's been compared to Brian Harvey of the Florida Marlins.
Strike three call. And Lewis goes down looking after Nomo fell behind 2-0. He came back and struck him out.
Take a look at just how far he torques. That knee really drops down and gets right parallel to the ground. This is the type of drop and drive you normally see from a pitcher, a power.
If anyone was at that game, please let me know. That would be awesome. Cool piece of history there at Candlestick.
Our pitcher.
So then Ichiro was, of course, the next big deal. 17-time All-Star, 17-time Gold Glove, 4-time MVP. I know you guys know this, but I just got to repeat it because it's so amazing. Single season hits leader. He'll get into the Hall of Fame as the first Japanese player in Cooperstown in 2025. Marlene mentioned this trip we did. It was probably the best, most impactful, just like memorable sporting moment I've ever been at, seeing Ichiro play his final games in Japan. I'm so lucky that we got to do a tour there, and I just wanted to play this little clip of him leaving the field. Obviously, you kind of had to be there, but it was really cool to see anyways, and I wanted to share it.
For the final time coming off a major league field.
The kind of just like love in the air, like the mutual respect between Ichiro and the fans was unreal throughout the whole weekend. And that moment of him walking off was just kind of the culmination of all of it. So the progression of Japanese baseball took another step when they won the first WBC in 2006. They always do really well in international tournaments, and you see Darvish is named there. I think Ichiro was on that team, Matsui, I believe, lots of great players, and really just kind of continuing to make their impression on the global stage. The last 20 years, I've been filled with, Japanese stars. I wanted to put Hideki Matsui in the A's uniform for this meeting. The Red Sox have a lot of thanks to give to Japanese pitchers. Koji Uehara, Daisuke Matsuzaka, and Hideki Okajima all helped them the World Series titles. Shigetoshi Hasegawa, he was actually the second player to come after Nomo, had a solid career at the Angels and Mariners, and Masahiro Tanaka, another really good player. And then that brings us to today in the big leagues. I'm sure you recognize these guys. Kenta Maeda and Yu Darvish both finished Cy Young runner-up a couple years ago. And then, of course, Shohei Ohtani and the new guy, Seiya Suzuki. But it's not just about Japanese players in the big leagues today, which is exciting for me. Right? It's getting Japanese baseball is getting attention, going the other way too. You see John Miller there. He's been wearing this hat all season long. If you guys have been watching Giants broadcasts or follow John Miller on social media, he's wearing the same hat I have, the Tokyo Yomiuri Giants, which I think is awesome that he's representing NPB on that sort of level. Another Giants connection there is Tsuyoshi Shinjo. He's riding in the hovercraft there. That was opening day this year. He's the manager of the Nippon Ham Fighters. And Shinjo was the first Japanese player to play in a World Series with the Giants in 2002. And he's been getting lots of international attention. For better or for worse, for me, I'd say for better. All the attention is good to me. Then Roki Sasaki, who was making, I couldn't believe I signed on to ESPN.com and he was the first story, Chiba-Lotte Marines pitcher. He threw 17 perfect innings in a row. He's just 20 years old. Kind of has like Jacob deGrom type stuff and physicality, and just a name to watch for sure on the international stage. I put on the right there Yuki Yanagita. He's one of my favorite players. He plays for the SoftBank Hawks. Has done really well on international tournaments against major league players, and just a super exciting player, really athletic, type of guy you want to pay money to watch. So I wanted to, I put this little thing together about the top 10 things about attending a pro baseball game in Japan, because, you know, you guys know the history and the players, but like really when I think about Japanese baseball, it's the experience of going that is really the most unique thing about it. So the domed ballparks, like 6 out of 12 teams play in domes. It's obviously unique. I know there's a time when people want to get rid of domes. I grew up, I never really went to dome parks. I think it's really cool. And I love how there's never a rain out. It gets really hot and humid in Japan. It has a tropical climate, so it rains and it's hot. Don't have to worry about that in Japan. And a lot of them really cool. So this is the Tokyo Dome, the most famous one, world famous Tokyo Dome. But there's also the Fukuoka Dome on the left there and the Osaka Dome on the right. They both kind of make me feel like I'm in an Independence Day movie, like outer space shuttle trailer or a hangar, I should say. Like they both, I don't know, they have like just these massive, impressive steel structures with cool design. The Fukuoka Dome actually opens and closes. They usually leave it closed though. Number 9, the post-game festivities. When the 27th out is made, the show is not over in Japan. They have like, if the team wins, they have shows. There's always a hero of the game where they interview him and give him a stuffed animal. The team bows to their fans to thank them, which is what this video is. That was the Giants bowing to their fans. Let me play that again. And then this was after a win. I recorded this on my not the greatest video, but it's like Dancing Queen, and there's a laser light show, and there's a whole dancing team on the field. You don't want to leave early in Japan. Here is, I think this is another bow. Oh yeah, this is the team, a form of a vow, just celebrating with their fans. That's in the Chiba-Lotte Marines. And then this is the hero of the game interview. You know, they always make a big deal of it, and everyone stays around to listen to what he has to say. Fireworks shows. This is, it's called the doage, where they throw the manager in the air. This doesn't happen every game, but this was after a game where this guy was going to retire. They throw him up in the air. They do that after the team wins or after they want to honor someone. And the idea is that the players put their trust in the manager all year long. And then at the end of the season, he puts his trust in them as they throw him up in the air and catch him. All right, number 8, the Japanese playing style. It's small ball in Japan for sure. The power, there are some power hitters. A lot of the power is imported. They'll get American players or Latin players that have power, but the Japanese style is to bunt, hit and run, steal bases, etc. On the right here, you see I circled how much he's choking up on his bat. Like you'll never see that in the big leagues anymore. And yeah, just guys stealing bases. There's always lots of action on the field. They play good defense, they run, they make things happen on the field. So that is quite a departure from MLB, and a lot of people who kind of gravitate towards Japanese baseball do so because of the style of play. Ballpark food, this is a big one for me. Basically, it's just a food tour for me when I go to Japan, and it starts at the ballpark. That was a bowl of udon noodles that I had. It was a cold game in spring, and how about that for ballpark food? More noodles, long potato. I love long potato. It's just like massive French fries. There's a shrimp, kind of fried shrimp hot dog, pork cutlet sandwich, shrimp cutlet sandwich. Every team has a menu with stuff named after their players. Sometimes they get into it where they really will have the players' food represented, and so fans always like to order things that are associated with their favorite player. More long potato, spam musubi, beef rice bowl, just great ballpark food, stuff that you don't see in the US and I can't get enough of. They do have pizza and chicken nuggets, but they look a little different in Japan. The team spirit and merch, that is a huge part of the Japanese baseball experience. Like, you see this guy's backpack, it's loaded with trinkets. Everyone's wearing red. That's a Seiya Suzuki jersey there. Kind of goes, no explanation needed for these ones. Fans are intense. The team stores here on the right, it's just loaded with trinkets and merch, every little thing you could ever imagine. And then there's lines before every game in the team stores because everyone wants to make sure they're decked out. And they don't have criminal pricing either, which I appreciate. The 7th inning balloon release is the 7th inning stretch in Japan. It's pretty awesome. It's taking a hiatus right now because of COVID. Hopefully it'll be back. But as the inning break approaches, everyone fills up these balloons. It's a genius move by the team because everyone buys these balloons. It's like $1 for a 2-pack or something, and you're buying them every game. So Bob Bavasi is a minor league operator. He always said how genius that was. He's like, I wish I thought of that. And then so what happens is they play the team's fight song and everyone sings along. And then in the culmination of the song, they release the balloons. Here's a video. And on the right there's some of our tour guests getting ready to release. More balloons. The world's cleanest stadiums. You see on the right there, those are all the different receptacles to sort your trash in, and every single person is following the rules. You'll see there, if you can tell, there's some chopsticks there. There's a certain chopsticks holder. There's a place to dump your ice. There's a place to dump your food. There's a place for the lids of your cups. There's a place for the actual cups, depending on what type of cup it is. Here's a group of people cleaning up after the game. They're making sure everything's picked up, which obviously wouldn't happen in anywhere else but Japan. On the left, you could just see the floor is shiny clean. And this was in, I think, September. So at the end of the season, the floor is just clean. Everything is clean and sparkling. And then those are kind of another view of the sorting that's required of your trash. One time, one of our tour guests brought peanuts from the US, and our on-the-ground tour guide is Japanese, about had a heart attack when she saw that they were dumping the shells on the ground, and made sure we picked them all up. Oops. The beer girls. So drinking beer at a Japanese baseball game is definitely not like the US, because these girls are walking around with draft beer in a backpack on their back. There's no pouring rights, so every beer is represented, and you're getting a draft beer poured at your seat. It's the range is $6 to $8, $8 being the high end. And they're running up and down the stairs. Every inning, you're going to get an option of every type of beer you could ever want. and served with a smile. They don't accept tips. It's just great customer service. And that's my wife there getting a beer at the Tokyo Dome. Number 2, getting to the game. This is so huge. There's only a few parks in the US where you could take public transit. And I always miss that when I come to major league games in the US because it's so easy. There's our group on the subway. And then that's the Shinkansen, the bullet train in front of Mount Fuji. You can take the bullet train between cities, and then you take the subway or local train once you're there, and you never need a car. On the left here is a walk in Hiroshima to the ballpark from the train station. It's just a sea of red. And everyone takes the train, so everyone does this walk, and there's food stands along the way. Just such a cool experience. There's some of our tour guests in Sapporo. The train that goes to the ballpark has the player. Every car has 2 players on it. Kohei Arihara is the player there. He's on the Rangers now. Easily the most impressive thing, the thing that you have to talk about the most in Japan is the fans. And the Oendan, which is the official cheering section, and the easiest comparison would be a college football game in the US with the student section and the people leading the cheers. Every team has that. And then the whole stadium also joins in. So these guys, this is another yell leader. Every player has his own song, every player on offense. And during his at bat, the entire Oendan and most of the entire stadium is singing his song and playing accompanying percussion with a little plastic bat or the beer cup or whatever it is. And they're doing it the entire at bat, all 9 innings. Doesn't matter the score, doesn't matter where the team's at in the standings. They'll practice the cheers and the songs before the season to make sure at game 1 that they're ready to go, because the fans really feel like they have an influence on, they're part of the team. This is a quick video. It doesn't capture it so well, but good enough. That was in the Cebu Lions Stadium. More Oendan pictures here. So that was the last thing, is the fans, obviously the best thing. The other, maybe tied for number 1 is best thing about going to baseball games in Japan is you're in Japan. So I just thought I'd show some pictures of Japan and our, I don't know, just some being in this country is so cool. These are a couple pictures of Mount Fuji. This is a video I took of Mount Fuji from the bullet train. It's like the most Japanese thing you could have, like bullet train and Mount Fuji at once. We're going like, I don't know, 120 miles per hour or something in that video. The cool thing about Japan is the contrast between the traditional, the Shinto religion and the shrines and the Buddhist influence. And then you have, the neon lights and the modern, being a technology leader in the world. And you're seeing, and those things happen side by side in the cities. It's kind of mind blowing, the contrast you'll see on a regular basis between the different aspects of their culture. These are both down south in Hiroshima. This building on the left is the ground zero of the atomic bomb. They have a museum there that is extremely well done. Kind of like the 9/11 museum, if any of you have been there, just really tasteful and well done, but also just like very impactful and emotional as well. Sumo, huge part of Japan. I took a video here of a match. We usually try to go to, if the tournaments are happening when we're there, we go to a match. This is a pretty good one, pretty good bout right here of this video I got. watch out if you're in row 1 there. The food in Japan, unreal. It's my favorite cuisine. There's some ramen on the left and pork cutlet tonkatsu on the right. Sushi, the sushi market where they have auctions for the tuna. Took a little video of this. The buyers are engaged in a spirited auction constantly all morning long for their fish.
Number one. Number 1 is sold. We're doing number 2 now.
So you can go to the market, watch them buy the tuna, and you can eat it right there too. This is a museum. My buddy and I went to this museum. It's like one of the coolest new museums. It's like one of the more popular ones around the world, with these interactive art exhibits. So yeah, Japan has, like, once again, the old and the new. They have some really old museums with Asian art, and then ones like this, which are pretty fun. And then like the anime culture and kind of robotics and manga and all that stuff. This is a show we went to. So you get the idea. Japan's pretty wild place, super fun. And once again, that's one of my favorite things about Japanese baseball is going to Japan. We do baseball tours, so I'd be remiss to not kind of mention a little bit about what we do. I'd love to have any of you along for a tour. A lot of people on our tours are SABR members. A lot of them are ballpark chasers who have, if they haven't been to all 30 MLB parks, they have that goal at some point in their life. And I just love it because you're with like-minded, people who love baseball and people who like to explore the world and experience new cultures. So I'm just going to quickly run through our tours and what we do. We do an annual tour to Japan. If you do the whole thing, you see all 12 NPB parks over the course of about 15 days. Obviously, that might be a bit much for some people, so we break it into smaller options as well. And you can just do a Tokyo only option. We're hoping to go in August of this year. Right now, Japan is unfortunately closed off to tourism, but I'm hoping that it opens within the next couple of months. We're going to Korea this year for sure, because they are open. The idea was to pair it with Japan. You can add on 5 days in Seoul to go see KBO games. KBO is probably the third best league in the world, but definitely has the best bat flips in the world. We're doing a USA West Coast tour this year because I just wanted to make sure that we did something, because I wasn't sure because of COVID. It's next month, and I'd love for any of you to, you don't have to join the tour, of course. I'm sure you don't need help going to a game in the Bay Area, but I'd love to have you join us for a game and sit with our crew and just hang out with people who I think that you'd get along with. If you're in SABR, I think you're going to get along with our crew. We're going to 6 MLB games and 5 minor or independent league games up and down the West Coast. And then our Bay Area segment is June 23rd, 24th, 25th. On the 25th, we're going to Martinez Sturgeon game in the Pecos League. And my parents and friends are going to put on a tailgate barbecue at the waterfront park there. They play at Joe DiMaggio Fields in Martinez, which will be pretty cool to see. We're also going to Netherlands. Honkbal is baseball in Dutch. That's in July. And there's a tournament there, Honkbal Week, with national teams from the US, Japan, Cuba, Netherlands, Taiwan, and Italy. So that'll be really fun. It's basically in Amsterdam. It's in Haarlem, which is, in my opinion, better than Amsterdam. It's just like a smaller version of Amsterdam. That's a 10-minute train ride away. That's going to be super fun. Once again, I'd love to have you along. And then finally, Dominican Republic. As Marlene mentioned, I used to go there. So the DR is a special place to me. And, it's the breeding ground of baseball players in the world, in my opinion. I had some stats there. 23% of professional players in the US are Dominican. 12% of big leaguers are Dominican. And we really just take a peek behind the curtain on that whole baseball development process, going to amateur things, professional things, winter league, MLB team academies, etc. Super fun tour there. Have a lot of friends, so we're able to make it kind of an insider experience. Last year, we ran into Juan Soto and Fernando Tatis Jr. These are just some pictures from the tour. Did a cool boat ride, saw some nice stadiums. Soto and Tatis were so amazing because they're just like, welcome to my country, and they're asking about our tour. It's cool because the Dominican guys, when they're at home, they have their guard down and are, just really at home, literally. I just want to share some other pictures from our tours while I'm at it. That's Gail and Lewis, who are chapter members. They came to the opening day. That's my wife and me at the same tour. We got like mothers and sons that come, whole families that come, college students. There's a crew of us in Sendai. And there's a guy having fun with some fans. Just a fun time on our tours. So just wanted to spread the word about the tours a little bit while I could, but that's really going to wrap it up. I wanted to bookend things with another haiku here from the same poet, Masaoka Shiki. This one from 1898. Under a faraway sky, the people of America began baseball. I can watch it forever. So thank you all so much for listening to me. Thank you for anyone who on YouTube is going to listen. Appreciate the invite. I haven't really been looking at the chat. I'm not sure if we had questions.
There's a few.
Okay, so I'll look through them. And then if anyone else has questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Let's see what we got chat-wise. Can you compare Japanese baseball to KBA? I'm assuming he means KBO, which is the Korean Baseball Organization. I would say that they're very similar as far as the experience of going to a game. The talent level is a little bit higher in Japan. The league is bigger. I think if you go into a game, you wouldn't really notice the difference. And their ballpark food is called chimek, which is fried chicken and beer. So it's a good time there. And let's see, what else we got? Oh, we have Steve also, he direct messaged me. He was at that game in 95, Nomo's first game. That's amazing. Robbie Thompson and Matt Williams were the heroes of that game. That's awesome. And it was a 15-inning game, so the reporters all had to wait 2 hours to talk to Nomo, an extra 2 hours. That's funny. Steve Heath asked, what is the baseball salary structure like? I don't have details on as far as the specifics on a cap or anything like that. I do know that they get paid much less. I think the top players are signing contracts that are maybe in the $5 million range, only for the really top players. It's not such a big money-making entity in Japan. The teams historically, you may have noticed, they're all named after companies. The SoftBank Hawks, the Yomiuri Giants. Yomiuri's a media company. The teams were historically referred to or kind of considered marketing arms of the business, as opposed to a team whose purpose is to win championships. And that kind of approach to things has kind of continued on in a sense of they're not just trying to win every game, make as much money as they can, and therefore things are affordable, tickets, food and drink, merchandise, and the players are not paid quite as well. A lot of times the highest paid players, at least in relation to their skill set, are the foreign players that are brought over. I'm gonna put, just as we're answering any more questions, my info up here. There's my email address. I'd be happy to answer any emails you have. And then please follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. If you are on those platforms, you can stay informed of what we're up to. But also, we really just try to disseminate information and interesting stuff about Japanese baseball. The purpose isn't really to talk about our tours on our accounts. You really just want to like spread the word about Japanese baseball. If you want to know more about our tours and Japanese baseball, then sign up for a newsletter, please, at JapanBall.com. We send weekly newsletters on what's going on in NPB. And then we also update people about our tours and whatnot. I'll leave that up there for just a second.
There's some good questions in there, Shane.
Yeah, I'll keep going through the questions. How do we sign up? JapanBall.com or contact me, Shane at JapanBall.com. The Martinez, Charles says he wants to come to Martinez and Marlene. Martinez is going to be really fun. Joe DiMaggio Fields, my mom is an amazing cook. My friend's going to help grill some meat. If you can buy a ticket on our website, and then that'll make sure you're sitting with us.
Cool.
Marlene asked if time of game is an issue. Yes, it is. The games are slow there. Pitchers like to nibble in Japan. Like they don't really come at the hitters, even though they make contact. Unlike in the US, there's just kind of a lot of cat and mouse going on. That said, they have ties, and the idea is because everyone takes public transportation, they don't want things to last into the middle of the night because then people can't get home on the train. So even though the games are relatively slow, or I shouldn't say relatively, they're slow, just like in the big leagues. You're not going to be there all night.
How long does the after game festivity last?
It's probably like 10 minutes or so.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not too
That's
much.
why I was asking about time of game. Did that impact that? Are they trying to make it faster?
I don't know that there are any sort of really
Kirk.
concerted efforts like there are here. Not that I'm aware of. Kirk asked about baseball cards, collected a few back in the 90s. Yeah, so that actually, I said Nomo is my introduction to Japanese baseball. My actual introduction was baseball cards, as my dad, I think is on this call, would go to Japan for business trips, and he'd bring baseball cards back to me just because I collected baseball cards. And I know that I started getting those in about 93 because I looked about 10 years later and I found an Ichiro rookie card in my collection, which was pretty cool to find. I had no idea who he was when I got it. Cards are big in Japan. And in the question there, so they're smaller. Some of them are smaller. They're usually standard size. I think that Topps actually is going to start making Japanese cards with this whole losing their MLB license thing. And but there's a couple of main manufacturers there, and Upper Deck and other companies also used to make Japanese cards. Cards of guys like Otani and Ichiro and now Seiya Suzuki are a hot commodity in the US now. And in Japan, they're definitely popular. Japan is a collecting culture. So, it's not huge, but if you're a baseball fan, then there's a good chance you collect baseball cards in Japan. I have a pretty good amount of them. And there's a couple, if you're interested in getting more, you can email me. I know a couple people who are in the US, Rob Fitz, the author, being one of them, who kind of deal in vintage Japanese cards and have connections for that.
Didn't he do a book? I know I've seen him do a presentation.
Yeah, he did a really cool book. I think it's his most recent one. It's called An Illustrated Introduction to Japanese Baseball Cards. You can get it as a digital book or as a coffee table book. Because the old school Japanese baseball cards are beautiful. They're like pieces of art. And a lot of them are like really cool shapes. They're really bright colors. And, there's like stuff from back in the early 1900s. And, of course, like guys like Sadaharu Oh, there's cards of him that are old school cards that are really cool looking. And so Rob captures all of those in the book. There's cards of Jackie Robinson in Japan that are like these really, and Don Newcomb, I think, played in Japan. Yeah, a couple American guys some really cool cards out there. Bob X. Oh, go ahead.
If there's, if you guys are interested in this, let Steve or Zach or me know, and we can see if Rob might do a presentation for us.
Yeah, Rob is, I had him, we have a Zoom series with JapanBall, and Rob was a guest on it. And he speaks he speaks at SABR events. He's really good.
Yeah.
He can talk about, he has so many different specialties now because he's written all these books. It could be baseball cards, it could be immigrant baseball, it could be Japan tours, Mashi, etc.
Right.
Bob asked about watching games on YouTube or any other ways to watch. That's always it's a common question, and one I still don't have the best answer for. The best option is Pacific League TV. You can just look that up. It's a subscription that you can pay for. You can watch all the Pacific League games. Most of them are not in English. I don't know if any of them might have English broadcasters. But the Pacific League is really trying to get their name out there. The Central League is controlled by the Tokyo Giants, and they just don't really have any interest in expanding or making their games available. So the Pacific League is trying to do it, but unfortunately that's only half the games, and it doesn't include the playoffs. That's the only really over the table legal way to do it, but there's plenty of ways to watch it. The easiest way to watch it is just to get a router that makes it seem like you're not in the US. Then like an internet router. That's what most people in the US do. I'm not going to advocate for it or say how to do it, but if you go on Reddit or if you go to the JapanBall community Facebook group and you ask, I'm sure there's lots of people who would tell you how they watch Japanese baseball games in the middle of the night. But there's a couple of YouTube channels that do highlights, Pacific League TV being the main one, that are a good way to kind of keep track of things if you don't want to be doing anything sketchy.
Women's baseball?
There is a women's baseball league. I'm trying, I definitely have it in my plan to try to go to a game on a tour. It's a new league, and you know how that is, where it's like the information is unclear, and where are the teams and all that. But it just started up, and Japanese women's baseball is pretty good on the international stage, and their softball team as well. They did really well. I think they actually won gold in the Olympics, if I'm not mistaken, or maybe they lost to the US in the gold medal game. But yeah, women's baseball is definitely becoming more and more popular in Japan.
Are games expensive relatively?
No, they're not. They're very affordable. A ticket can run you from less than $10 to maybe like $40. They encourage you to bring food and drink from outside, and there's mini marts all over Japan, so people tend to do that to save money. But even once you're in the ballpark, the stuff is very reasonable. The most expensive beer is $8. A bento box is maybe $6 or $7 depending on what you get. I haven't been in a couple of years, but it still is very reasonable. If you bring outside drinks, you can even bring a beer in, and they just make you pour it into a cup when you walk into the stadium, so that you don't have bottles. It's like they really don't care about what you bring, as long as you're not bringing bottles in. Yeah, very affordable. And then you take the train, so you don't have to pay for parking. It's expensive to get to Japan, though.
Yeah. You know what I'm thinking about, and I know a lot of you have gone to games internationally. The enthusiasm of the crowds in Latin American baseball, and Japanese baseball, and Korean baseball, and compared to the kind of not so enthusiastic sometimes crowds at our games these days, I don't know that our crowds ever partied the same way other fans are partying. Guys, anybody have thoughts on that? as to why or why not, or maybe minor league, there's more enthusiasm with the fans.
Yeah, that's a good question. I'd be like, it obviously kind of developed organically in Japan because they weren't getting their cues from here.
Yeah.
And in South America, I mean, I always think that going to a sporting event is the best way to experience a new culture for various reasons. But the fans are comfortable and they're at ease in the ballpark, so you really get to see what people are like. And it's also just like here, a cross section of the community. There's cheap seats, there's expensive seats, there's people going after on business with clients, and then there's people who are the diehards who are into bleachers. And
I was just thinking of all the different bleacher fans that we've seen over the years, and how a lot of bleacher fans get into it.
Yeah, totally. And so in Japan and in the south of in the Caribbean or in Mexico or Venezuela and these places, it's easy to see the comparison in Latin America of how the fans are representative of the culture, right? You can go anywhere in Dominican Republic or Cuba and people are dancing, listening to music, drinking, loud, animated. You go to the ballpark and it's exactly the same thing. In Japan, it's at first glance, it doesn't make quite as much sense because people are very reserved. They respect your space, you respect your privacy. There's lots of humility in Japanese culture. And you go to a game and it's very boisterous. And it starts to make sense though, once you start to realize that, whereas in Cuba and the DR, it's just like pandemonium. In Japan, everyone is doing the exact same thing. Like, it's well practiced, they're cheering. And so the interesting thing is when you go to these MLB tours in Japan, so when the A's were playing the Nippon Ham Fighters and the Mariners are playing the Tokyo Giants, for half an inning, it's boisterous, right? When the Japanese team is hitting, everyone is cheering, everyone's singing the songs. It's just what you expect. For the other half inning, it's literally silence. It's almost eerie. It's bizarre. Like, you could hear a pin drop in the stadium, except for the handful of fans who are there from the US. And of course, if like Ichiro or someone is hitting, but they don't cheer out of turn. Of course, if someone hits a home run, makes a good play, you clap and cheer. But like, it usually then evolves into like the song that they sing when the team scores a run or something, and then everyone's doing the same thing again. And so obviously I'm making generalizations here, but in that sense, you kind of understand of like why they're like, how it's still indicative of the culture. And I think in Japan, it really started with the school sports. Like I said in the beginning, like the student sections, like Japanese baseball was only amateur for the first like 70 years of baseball in the country. And that kind of student section excitement and passion was the way that you watched baseball in Japan. And so when it became professional, it naturally progressed. Someone actually said that they learned to cheer that way because of college football in the US. Like, when people were coming over, they taught them that's how you do it. I'm not sure if that's true, but it would make sense because when you see it, it really reminds you of going to a college football game.
Thanks. This is really interesting.
I'm glad. I hope it was.
How are we doing for time here?
Everyone. Well, it looks like we're over an hour, so it was longer than I thought it would be. And I'm happy to answer any more questions if people have it. But also, I would just love to catch a ball game with anyone here. I live in Santa Cruz. I'm from Cupertino. I'm in the South Bay a lot. So I'd love to meet you all. And whether it's on our tour, if you want to join our group for a game, that would be great. Or if not, Marlene, I plan on seeing you at the A's game in a couple
San
weeks.
Jose Giants. San Jose Giants.
Oh yeah,
San Jose Giants. Exactly.
San Jose Giants. Maybe we should think. Maybe we should think about doing that, or maybe I can put together the information about Martinez and send it out. And if folks are interested, they can follow up on that on
Martinez sounds
on June
great.
25th.
That sounds really, really fun.
Yeah,
That
that'd be
would be
great.
fun.
It's a Saturday night game, so it's a perfect opportunity to do that.
That's
I'll
cool.
get
'cause it's
more
something different.
information from you.
Oh,
Yeah, I'd love to
yeah.
make it a JapanBall SABR collab.
Right, and it's close enough for Sacramento folks to come down too.
Yeah, exactly.
It's closer than San Jose.
There's the Pecos League people are going to be blown away. We're going to give them the best crowd they have all year.
Cool.
What are the Warriors doing?
They're down by about 9 in the third quarter.
Oh, okay.
Plenty of time.
All right. Any other questions for Shane before we wrap it up?
Thank you very much.
Fascinating. Really, really cool.
Yeah, thank you very much for
Really
joining
fun.
us tonight. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you all.
and
Thanks for having me.
Just as a reminder, if you joined late or whatnot, I will make sure to post this in its entirety on YouTube within the next few days. If you just Google search the main keywords, SABR, JapanBall, Dusty Baker, Lefty O'Doul Chapter, anything like that, I'll make sure that pops up within the keywords of YouTube. So.
And we'll be sending out information about the upcoming meetings, and you can find out all about the SABR events on the SABR website. And don't forget to vote in the election.
Oh, and register too for the annual SABR
if you're going to Baltimore
conference and convention in August in Baltimore. That registration is available and up currently. It'll be my first. So I'm excited. Yeah.
You're gonna love it.
All right, everybody. Well, thanks again. And
Thanks
hope everybody
again.
has a great night. And see you next time.
Thanks,
Thanks a
Shane.
lot.
Bye.
Steve,
Bye-bye.
Zach, thanks. Thanks, everybody.
See you.